strong.
Chapter 31, Righteous Father. Qingzhou City is an island city, located in the East China Sea, surrounded by the sea. At this moment, in the middle of the vast ocean, a large ship was sailing towards the direction of Qingzhou City. There were many figures on the deck of the ship, one of them wore a group of knights. There were 3 figures standing on the edge of the deck, a middle-aged man and 2 young men and women. Her middle-aged appearance was majestic and extraordinary. The young man beside him was quite handsome. There was always a hint of evil in his eyes. The woman beside him looked cold and proud, but her body was very sexy and attractive. This is Qingzhou City. The youth looked ahead and said lightly. Yes, Qingzhou City is an island city in the East China Sea. There are many island cities like the East China Sea, so it's not flashy. Maybe you haven't heard of it before. Middle-aged nodded. If you don't say, you haven't heard of it, it's just that a peerless figure like him actually walked out of such a small place. The young man shook his head and looked a bit hard to believe, even if he had always been proud, but said when it came to the word, I still couldn't help my heartbeat. The news must be true. Vaguely, we can find some traces of our Donghaifu history, but I don't know if he has left anything behind in Qingzhou City. Middle Ages Street. I hope I didn't come here in vain. It was hard to imagine that the most dazzling figure in the Eastern Divine Land for thousands of years would come from the island city. Emperor Yi King, the legend of the Eastern Divine Kingdom, ruled the Eastern Divine Kingdom together with Emperor Donghuang for 300 years. Suddenly he was fiercely 15 years ago. The cause of death is still a mystery. It was already a taboo subject, but in Donghai, he found some traces that he had left behind, confirming that he left Donghai and finally pointed to the island city and the city of Qingzhou on the East China Sea. The barge traveled rapidly, gradually approaching the coast, Qingzhou City, and slowly zooming in on the view. On the beach, there are many big men waiting there. The city owner and the big people of the Murong Chamber of Commerce are very respectful. Qingzhou City didn't know the big man who was coming. Yi Futian didn't know either. He walked the familiar streets, and Yi Fu slowly looked. His pace was easy, and he missed his family. Futian is back, shouted a woman selling croissants by the roadside. Mother, fine. Yi Futian smiled lightly, and shouted at the 2 old men who were not far away playing chess. Uncle Wong, Grandpa Yun. It's still your brat's mouth. The Shaolin family girl is at home, and she will turn 15 after this year, and she will look quite good. Uncle Wong said with a smile. Uncle Lin, Xiao King is here. Yi Futian stopped and shouted at the shopkeeper next to the restaurant. Not here, Futian. You haven't been home for a long time. Come back and have a look. The shopkeeper smiled shakily and looked at Uncle Wong with a piercing gaze. Brother Futian is back. There was a clear sound from the restaurant. The dead girl is back at work. The shopkeeper whispered. Yi Futian flashed a smile, then continued, and waved his hand, shouting, I will find you one day. After he left, Uncle Wong said to the shopkeeper, Xiao Lin, Futian, but the master of the Yi family, you are not happy to find your girl to play with. Master, the mixed world demon lord is not serious at the age of 10. Which girl is not deceived by him, do you dare? Treasurer Lin said bitterly, if any of the girls liked mixed world demons, it would be bad luck. Yi Futian didn't have that kind of awareness. As he crossed the street, he saw an independent house in front of him, with the words, Yi, engraved on it. There were 2 guards outside the palace, and a grey-haired figure stood by the door, and his cloudy eyes looked outside the palace. When he saw Yi Futian, those cloudy eyes had a bright light. Father of truth, Yi Futian shouted before he arrived. He ran to the door of the house and said, Why are you here, Yi Fu? This figure is not old, but because of his hair and body, he looks very old. He smiled at Yi Futian. At the end of the year, thinking about you having to come back, I was waiting for you, right? Why? I haven't seen the rest of my life. The rest of my life go to Tianyao Mountain Court. Yi Futian stepped forward, held the old man's arm, and said, Yi Fu, you have more white hair. It's okay, it's good to see you growing up. For a righteous father, this is the most honorable thing. The old white-haired man shook his head and smiled. True father is talking nonsense again. Yi Futian saw his righteous father said, honored, a little speechless. Where is the bullshit? One day, you will understand the true words of the father. The old man laughed. Go home. Okay, go home. Yi Futian took a quick step, came to the courtyard, and saw Yi Beiquan said to him, Smelly boy also knows to come back. It is the end of the year, where are you going to herd girls? Yi Futian's face was black, and he said in his heart, Father, I just came back. Can you let me feel my father's concern? Futian, ignore your father and let mother take a good look at it. Juan Mifu came to the other side. It was Yi Futian's mother, Yi Ro. His parents have the same last name. It is said that the mother is a foreigner, and the father met when he went to practice. After returning to him, he returned home. Hey, I don't know what kind of luck a person has, such a good and kind wife. Yi Fuxian glanced at Yi Beiquan Road. Your boy is looking for a fight. If you have the skills, you can bring a virtuous and beautiful daughter-in-law to show Lao Su. Yi Beiquan went to Yi Ro proudly. I don't want to, otherwise it won't be easy. Yi Fuxian said shamelessly. Brother, you are bragging again. Outside, a beautiful young girl smaller than Yi Fuxian came over and looked at Yi Fuxian with a smile. There was also a beautiful woman next to him. Yi Fuxian's aunt Yi Rong and her Yi Shaocan, followed her mother's name. Behind them, there were two figures, a middle-aged teenager with around 13 years old, Yi Fuxian's uncle Yi Dongliu and his son Yi Mo. Uncle Aunt. Yi Fuxian shouted, then looked at the girl with a smile. Yi Shaocan, itchy skin. Yi Shaocan was afraid to hide behind Yi Rong, and said, you want to play hooligans again, I can watch here. Xi and his team laughed. Yi Mo's head came forward, and said, Fuxian, Uncle said that you did a great job now, is it right or wrong? Of course, your brother and I are now practicing martial arts, and we are close to the world of glory. The worshippers are like clouds in Qingzhou Academy. Yi Fuxian laughed and teased Yi Mo. Yi Mo looked at Yi Fuxian disdainfully, and said, I almost believed what I said. I believed too, Yi Shaocan echoed. Fuxian, you guys don't talk much. When can you bring home a beautiful daughter-in-law to say what you said? Fendi, a girl is watching closely. Qingshu's beautiful talent is good. Be careful to run away. Yi Rong smiled. Qingshu, Yi Fuxian shook his head with a bitter smile and saw his expression. Everyone showed shocked expressions. This kid, exposed, doesn't seem to be catching up. Okay, well, the family is rarely together, talking while eating. Yi Ro said with a smile. Everyone nodded. The table was full of joy, and the laughter continued to seem extra warm. After dinner, the people left one after another. Yi Fuxian asked his father for Gukan, and then returned to his courtyard. Immediately, there was a melodious voice in the courtyard, and it looked very calm under the moonlight. Next day he came back, the martial arts stepped into the world of glory. Yi Fuxian was very happy. In the blink of an eye, it was the last day of the end of the year, and night fell, but Qingzhou City was brightly lit, with fireworks constantly blooming in Qingzhou City. At Yi Mansion, a courtyard had melodious music. A boy is playing the piano gracefully, and there is a boy sitting on the ground to practice, but at this moment, the rest of his life opened his eyes and looked at Yi Fuxian. He seemed to feel wrong. The piano sound gradually rested. Yi Fuxian looked at the bright moon in the sky. I don't know why he was a little restless. Fuxian. Outside, the white-haired old man came in and looked at Yi Fuxian. This tone can be soothing, but you seem to have something in mind, and your heart is a little disturbed, and the piano is a mess. I do not know what happened. Yi Fuxian smiled bitterly. The piano sound is full of joy, thought, and boy, you've really grown up. The white-haired old man whispered softly, who is that girl? Yifu. Yi Fuxian was slightly surprised, glanced at the rest of his life, and saw that he was shaking his head. He didn't tell his father about Yi Fuxian. Did you really miss it? Yi Fuxian shook his head with a bitter smile. Did I fail in my business and live up to your expectations? Foolish child, this is a process to go through. How many heroes in ancient times could escape the love of their children? The white-haired old man walked to Yi Fuxian and said softly, Godly father is not against your love, but he must when you go to give affection, you must remember that your woman will be the mother of the world in the future. Yi Fuxian looked at the old man. He naturally knew that his older father had high expectations for himself since he was a child, even higher than his own imagination. Father, I am afraid that I will disappoint you in the future. Yi Fuxian whispered softly. Believe in yourself, just as your godly father believed in you. The old man patted Yi Fuxian's shoulder, and said, Go, your family is waiting for you, and the guests of the Feng family are here. Yes, for the rest of our lives, we are together. Yi Fuxian said the rest of his life. All my life, I have something to say to him, said the old man. Okay, Yi Fuxian nodded and left the courtyard. After he left, there was a wind outside the courtyard, and the door was closed. The old man looked at the rest of his life and said, Let me see how your life and soul practice. The rest of his life stood up, his mind moved, his eyes suddenly released a terrible light, a terrible breath flowed in his body, the aura between heaven and earth disappeared, a layer of demon-like armor covered the body, the soul appeared, and the rest of this moment was like a demon. It doesn't matter. The old man nodded, and the rest of his life recovered his soul, and his eyes returned to normal. For the rest of your life, you must remember that you will always be the strongest sword and the strongest shield around Fuxian. One day in the future, your name will be engraved in the history books. He knew that he would protect the boy forever, not just because of his father's words. Chapter 32, Sinus Love. At the end of New Year's Eve, everyone in the Yi family was here, and Feng Ruhai's family also came. Although the two were friends, it was the first time Feng Ruhai had never come to Yi's New Year. Uncle Feng. Yi Fuxian shouted at Feng Ruhai, and then sat between Yi Shaocan and Yi Mo. After 16 nights, Futian has become more and more handsome. Feng Ruhai saw Yi Futian being praised. Because of spiritual practice, today Yi Fu's weather is more extraordinary than before, and his body has become more beautiful. This, coupled with the handsome face, was very romantic. Feng Qingshu had beautiful eyes looking at Yi Futian, and she still couldn't forget the sight of Qingshu Zugong a month ago. The young man was standing in the extreme beauty of the snow. Yi Futian used to tease him. He felt like Yi Futian had a can tangled around him, but now he was so close, but such a long distance away. Wouldn't it be better if that didn't happen? This kid inherited my 3 pointers, but the Qingshu is now so sturdy, so beautiful, and I don't know if you were born. Yi Beiquan looked at the wind like the sea, making the wind like the sea stare at him fiercely. Don't brag about each other's children. If you like it, it's better to be a relative. Your aunt Yi Futian, Yi Rong smiled. Yi Futian's face was stunned, and Feng Fengzhu's beautiful eyes shone with confusion. People stared at him and couldn't help but lower their heads. Feng Ruhai looked at Yi Futian and looked at Yi Rong again. Brother Feng, don't look at him. I don't know what that brat is doing. As long as Qingshu has no opinion, she can laugh tonight. Yes, my sister likes beautiful women. Yi Shaokan also helped her mother. Brother, you are out of luck. Yi Mo whispered. Yi Futian was embarrassed. Did anyone ask his opinion? Qingshu girl, what do you think? Yi Rong looked at the girl looking down, and saw Feng Qingshu looking up. Her face was red, and she secretly glanced at Yi Futian. Then she thought of that day and Yi Futian. The figures standing side by side couldn't help but feel a little lost in their hearts, shaking their heads and saying, I don't deserve to fall into the sky. This, rejected. Yi Rong was a little embarrassed, and then laughed. It's okay. You are still young, and you still have time to cultivate your feelings. Hey, fly. Yi Shaokan whispered in Yi Futian's ear. Brother, shut up. Yi Mo stepped forward and whispered. Futian will work hard after that. Don't let Qingshu underestimate you. Yi Futian's uncle Yi Donglu also spoke. Thinking that Yi Futian was disappointed, Yi Futian was silent, but continued to nod, not speaking. What are you guys thinking? At this time, footsteps came, and a guard from Yefu came and said, Master, someone is looking for Master outside. Looking for me? Yi Futian was a bit confused. Go and have a look, Yi Beiquan said. Okay. Yi Futian nodded, and then left with the guards. After he left, Yi Rong said, Qingshu, Futian Deshao grew up with you. You give him more time, have no chance at all. No. Wu Fengqingzu was a little embarrassed, and a little curious who was looking for Yi Futian. When Yi Futian came outside Yefu, he saw a stunning figure standing quietly outside, and couldn't help but blink. Then a bright smile appeared on his face, and he said, Miss me. Ji Hua Ziyu looked at him and said, My father said that Qingshu City will be alive tonight. Let me go out to relax, just look at Yefu, and ask if this is your house. I didn't expect such a coincidence. Yes, it's a coincidence. Yi Futian blinked, and looked at the girl in front of him with a smile. His heart was warm, and the fairy had a hard mouth. Then let me relax with you. Yi Futian laughed. Everything is at your doorstep. Didn't you invite me to sit down? Hua Jiu smiled with a slightly bent head, and the cute gesture made the heart melt. Ah, Yi Futian was somewhat flattered and took the woman to his house. Is this, see old man? You do not want. Hua Jiu said Yi Futian with a confused smile. How can, sooner or later, the ugly daughter-in-law sees her in-laws, what are they afraid of? Yi Futian laughed, but Hua Jiu blinked. Ugly daughter-in-law. I saw her walking forward with a smile and slender jade hands. That man can't move. Yi Futian felt a chill on his waist, and turned around and slipped. Who are you ugly? Hua Jiu followed with a smile. Okay, the beautiful daughter-in-law is okay. Yi Futian laughed. Yi Futian. The voices of the two were getting further and further away. The guards outside Yefu glanced at each other, and then one person worshipped with an expression of admiration. Master is great. Extraordinary. Other people also admired him. This girl, as beautiful as a fairy, even asked to meet her parents. If a man is not romantic, a man should be as shameless as a master, and the fairies have cheated on the house. The two of them walked side by side towards the party, and Hua Jiu asked Yi Futian, your family's annual banquet is today. Is the family getting together? Yeah, a house party. Yi Futian nodded his head. Soon, the two of them came to the banquet. The people at the banquet saw Yi Futian and Hua Ziyu side by side, and they became silent immediately, one by one stupid. What a beautiful young lady. Yi Mo muttered. Yi Yerong blinked, looked at Hua Jiu, and then looked at Feng Qingshu. It's a massacre. Feng Qingshu naturally saw Hua Jiu. How could she never expect Hua Jiu to appear at Yi Futian's house, and on such days, Mei Yan exuded a great sense of loss, and couldn't help lowering her head. The little hand squeezed the corner of the skirt tightly. Futian, didn't you introduce him? Yi Rong smiled. Interpretation of flowers. Yi Futian introduced, she is my teacher's daughter. Teacher's daughter. People looked at him with a smile, and they all showed an understood look, but Wajiayu's face was a little hot, and there was a little panic, but it didn't contradict this feeling. On the other hand, there is little joy. Stupidly standing there, I can't sit here. Yi Beiquan reacted. He naturally knew Hua Jiu. Last time he was a little confused about the relationship between the two. He didn't expect this boy to be so strong. Little Yi Mo jumped up and gave up his position. Yi Futian and Hua Jiu sat together. After listening to Yi Futian's introduction, Hua Jiu shouted sweetly at Yi Beiquan, "Uncle, aunt, uncle." Yi Futian thought to himself that this fairy was not so sweet to himself. "Brother, why did you lie to the house?" Yi Shaokan whispered beside Yi Futian. "Yarn grade, understand." Yi Futian smiled and looked at Yi Shaokan. Yi Shaokan gave him a disdainful look. Although Yi Futian has good grades, but the value of Waji's next language is against the sky. Girl after Zunhua Jiu sat down. He sat quietly, but the atmosphere was still a bit subtle. Before long, Feng Qingshu whispered, "Father, I'm done, let's go back first." "Okay." Feng Ruhai nodded, and then the group said goodbye. Yi Rong clearly noticed that Feng Qingshu's eyes had evaded, and her heart was like a mirror. Turns out it wasn't a refusal. "Father, mother, I also went to relax with Jiu." Yi Futian also said. "Go, take care of XEU outside." Yi Beiquan nodded. "I know," Yi Futian replied, then left Yefu with Waji. Beautiful fireworks bloom around Qingzhou City, especially in the Qingzhou Lake area. Many people canoe on the lake, or families, or lovers, and there are people standing on the side of the lake to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Very beautiful. Hua Jiu and Yi Futian strolled here, looking at the beautiful scenery on both sides of Qingzhou Lake and the lake water. Hua Jiu's beautiful eyes were filled with joy. A beautiful view is not as beautiful as a person. Yi Futian whispered softly, and Hua Jiu glared at him, but his heart was very happy. This kind of happiness had never happened before. 26-year-old girls begin to feel love, and have a vague feeling that this should be a feeling of love. Wajiayu is walking around, some people guess the lantern riddle, some people do tricks. Yi Futian has been behind him. Watching the charming smile on the girl's face, the worries of these days seem to instantly turn into in the end. He finally determined the reason why the heart couldn't calm down in the past few days. Spent 3 months together, laughing and swearing. It turned out that there was already a love bud in his heart, but he didn't know it. On the side of Qingzhou Lake, Wajiayu saw many tourists putting wishing lamps into the lake water, and he also studied together, holding a wishing lamp in his hand, placing it in the lake water, closing his eyes, and wishing. "Okay." Hua Jiu opened her eyes and said to Yi Futian next to her. "What hope do you make?" Yi Futian asked. "I won't tell you." Hua Jiu smiled, her eyes looked up at the sky, fireworks bloomed in the sky, and she said softly, "Are we sure about the relationship now?" "Ah." Yi Futian froze, looking at Hua Jiu with a strange look. "Okay, what's the deal?" Yi Futian blinked. Xe Wajiayu still looked up at the sky, but didn't see Yi Futian, but the next moment, Yi Futian felt a soft jade hand touch his arm, as if looking for something. Xe Yi Futian stretched out his hand, holding a slender hand, the corner of the boy's lips, and a bright smile bloomed. Feeling the softness of his palm, he squeezed it, and a reddish light appeared on Hua Jiu's face, and said softly, "That's the connection." Xe Yi Futian slightly closed his eyes and then opened them. Like Hua Ziyu, he stared at the fireworks blooming in the sky. The two of them stood side by the lake, holding hands, like true lovers. It turned out that the fairy was very stupid and cute. Time seems to be still, silence is better than sound. Even though Yi Futian didn't answer, Hua Jiu's pretty face still spread the most beautiful smile, prettier than fireworks. Chapter 33, Farewell. On both sides of Qingzhou Lake are the best restaurants in Qingzhou City. Currently, there was a table overlooking the view of a restaurant by the window. Wu Murongqiu was also among them, but he was only accompanying guests, and no one at the table would be lower than him. For example, the young man sitting is a big man from Donghaifu. Next to him is Weibeng, the main son of Qingzhou City. Murongqiu, is there any news about Tianyao Mountain? The young man from Donghai Prefecture asked Murongqiu. Our people paved the way in Tianyao Mountain, and this afternoon we heard back that there is a mysterious area. What might be hidden? Murongqiu responded respectfully. If you continue like this, I am afraid that everyone I brought will be buried in Tianyao Mountain. Are the two of you going to send someone there? Chia Fan said to Murongqiu. I'll tell my dad when I get back. Murongqiu and Wei Feng nodded. Chia Fan nodded, facing Murongqiu. I hope you are not mistaken. The owner of the Tuxiong Palace is my father's brother and sister, and I personally experienced it. There is no mistake. The dragon appeared on Tianyao Mountain, Murongqiu confirmed. Okay. Chia Fan looked out the window, where the fireworks were beautiful, and the two figures were standing beside the lake. Since the woman was too beautiful, he pointed his finger at it and asked, Who are they? Muronqiu looked over there, and when they saw that figure, their faces suddenly became extremely ugly. Flower interpretation language. Qingzhou City's first daughter Hua Fengliu, Yi Futian, who was previously a disciple of Qingzhou Zugong, who later with rebels, is a disciple of Hua Liu, Muronqiu said. Flower romance. The middle-aged look next to Chia Fan flashed. Kinmo flower romantic. My father checked. In Donghai City, the romantic flower has the title Keen Demon. Muronqiu nodded. That said, it is Hua Fengliu and her daughter. Middle-aged thought. Is he the one the painting sages wiped out? Chia Fan showed an interesting look. I didn't expect to be able to meet here a character who was once famous in Donghai City. Yes. The middle-aged nodded next to him. This girl should be considered a member of that family. You better not have any thoughts, otherwise something will be very troublesome. He knew who the young master was, so he reminded him on purpose. I have a sense of size, go ahead and say hello. Chia Fan smiled and then stood up and walked out of the restaurant. The middle-aged man followed him. The group walked out of the restaurant and went to Yi Futian and Hua. Xiu went in the direction. Yi Futian and Hua Ziyu enjoyed this beautiful picture quietly, but they felt like they felt something. When they returned, they saw a group of people walking towards them, and seeing Muronqiu in the crowd, Yi Futian's eyes couldn't help blinking. A different big house. Miss Yu, at Chia Fan in the lower East China Sea. Chia Fan stopped in front of Hua Jiu, and there was a shameless appreciation in the evil eyes. The girl in front of him had more faces than he had ever seen before. Any woman. Is there something wrong? Waji's tone was a bit cold. I have always admired Keen Demon's style, but unfortunately I have never had the opportunity to meet. It is a great honor to meet Miss Xiu here, so I came here to interrupt. I wonder if Miss Xiu gifted her face and went to the restaurant to sit. Mild. Yi Futian frowned. This Chia Fan is almost as if he doesn't exist. Do not go. Hua Jiu smiled, but her smile showed some distance. The people next to Chia frowned. Disturbed. Chia Fan smiled after a moment of silence, then turned around and left directly. When he turned around, the smile in his eyes disappeared in an instant. A cold glint flashed past. This is really disappointing. Yi Futian said a little depressed, stretched out his hand, seemed to want to catch something. What do you want to do? Hua Jiu avoided, and looked at Yi Futian with a smile. Say a good relationship. Yi Futian said innocently. Yeah, haven't you determined the relationship? Hua Jiu's smile was slightly pleasant. Fairy, how can you do this? Yi Futian is sad. After the relationship is determined, you can't touch it. How are you? Hua Jiu smiled and looked at her with a smile. Since the relationship is established, you can't hurt other women in the future, and come to me wherever I am. No, the relationship is not in place. Yi Futian felt a bit cheated. You try. My father said you are dishonest. Let me go home early. I will go. Hua Jiu looked at Yi Futian, in the beautiful eyes, a little mistreated. Tomorrow may be separated. He may be separated if you don't see yourself. Will you blame him? Yi Futian looked at him sadly, and saw Yi Futian's expression. He couldn't stand Waji's words. He stretched out his little hand like white jade and handed it to Yi Futian. However, Yi Futian didn't bother to look at him, and said, Are you leaving? With beautiful eyes said in Zia Hua Jiu, Yi Futian's leave obviously doesn't only mean the difference at this time. After falling in love, I left without saying goodbye, and then embarked on a long road to love. This kind of dog bloodline was given to me. Don't you think this is unfair and cruel to me? Yi Futian looked at Waji and said, after so many months of hanging out, where would he not know what a fairy character is, even if he likes her? How can she be so proactive? Plus the previously mentioned words, how could Yi Futian not understand what is going on? Occur. There is a hint of sadness in Yanyu Jiu's beautiful eyes. I saw her lower her head. Her eyes were a little red, but she didn't know how to explain. What do you want me to do? Hua Jiu lowered her voice, raised her head. Maimu was no longer spared, looked at Yi Futian. Seeing the perfect face in front of his eyes, and his touching eyes, Yi Futian's heart immediately melted, and he felt depressed. Dog blood, which makes me like a fairy. Beautiful death is so strong. Hua Jiu heard Yi Futian's words and smiled sweetly, saw Yi Futian's sad expression, and whispered softly, Okay, then I will compensate you, otherwise I will not go tonight, I will always be with you. Ah, isn't that too soon? Yi Futian's eyes immediately lit up. Tonight, stay with him. Seeing Yi Futian's low expression, Waji stomped on Yi Futian hard. What do you want? I didn't mean it like that. What do you mean? Yi Futian blinked. I'm sorry. Hua Jiu turned around, but Yi Futian grabbed his arm, and Yi Futian said, I will take you back. Ha! Hua Jiu nodded gently. This time, she didn't break her arm again, leaving Yi Futian to hold her. Let's get on the boat first. Yi Futian said, and Hua Jiu nodded gently. Then the two took the painting and descended into Qinghai Lake. There are many painting boats on Qinghai Lake, the lake is sparkling, and fireworks are still blooming in the sky. Boys and girls sit on each other's bows, sitting like each other in a painting, and tourists often envy eyes. At this time, there was a yacht opposite, with several figures standing on the bow. The two of them saw Yi Futian and Hua Jiu stunned. General Qin, sister. Yi Futian shouted. Qin Shui was dressed simply, and accompanied his family like New Year's Eve. When he saw the person in the photo, he gave Yi Futian a thumbs up. It's romantic, Qin Yian laughed. Yi Futian trembled with a smile, as if something bad had happened, and the yacht passed by, with a voice next to him, Sister Shi's figure is really good. Ha! Yi Futian nodded subconsciously, then found it wrong, and saw Hua Jiu looking at him with a smile. But I still prefer fairies. Yi Futian said immediately. Ha! Hua Jiu snorted softly, looked at the front, and then he felt a demon claw that stretched to his waist, gently flashed, and Hua Jiu shook, and he also left Yi Futian with his body slightly tilted, his head resting on Yi Futian's shoulder. At this moment, silent and beautiful, the distance between the heart and the heart seems to be steadily closing. It was late at night when I returned to the Qingzhou Academy Palace. Compared to the bustling Academy Palace in Qingzhou City, it seems to be very quiet, and the flowers are asleep. I walked into the room quietly, and Hua Jiu found that Yi Futian followed her into the study, and couldn't help blushing. You will not rush to take me home, it is not safe at night. Yi Futian rushed to speak before Hua Ji said. Seeing Hua Ji glare at him again, are you patient? Where's your own room? Hua Jiu looked at the shameless man. Do you want to go tomorrow? I want to see you a few more times, otherwise I don't know when I will see you again. Yi Futian said softly, although he knew it was a sweet talk, but Hua Jiu was still gentle and hateful. Glancing at him, he must be compensated today. I walked over to the bed, took off my coat, and exposed my perfect curves. Yi Futian's eyes shone for a few minutes, and then Hua Jiu smiled and looked at him and said, Is your body good? Perfect. Yi Futian only felt a little hot. Hua Jiu smiled proudly, then went straight to the blanket, her back to him, her face slightly reddened. Really? Grinned the little elf. Yi Futian is depressed, miss, and he is really taking revenge. I don't see you like this. Yi Futian spoke again, and Hua Jiu ignored him, but after a while, he slowly turned around and faced him, saying, No one is close. He said. He slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep. Yi Futian secretly admired the near-perfect face, feeling a touch of warmth. It seems that after a long time, when Hua Jiu opened his eyes, he found that Yi Futian was still watching him, and couldn't help but whisper softly, I can't sleep. I'll play the piano for you. Yi Futian softly chanted, then stood up and left this side. After a while, the sound of a piano sounded outside. Anning, peace. The melody of the music is melodious and soft, it seems to contain a vague love, and also sad to leave. Yan Huajiu closed his eyes and slowly fell asleep, but before he knew it, 2 lines of tears slipped from his eyes, but his expression on the perfect face was still smiling. Turns out this is love. Warmth of first love, the heartbeat of holding hands, the sadness of leaving, go straight to the heart. Ah! The morning of the first day of 10,000 years. A black eagle came to Qingzhou Zugong and waited outside the romantic courtyard. In the courtyard, Hua Jiu was treated and dressed in Xingyi's dress, like a fairy on earth. Her face is always hanging with a smile, beauty is not square. I walked to the gate of another courtyard and looked back and smiled. I saw the teenager was still playing the piano, and his eyes were clear on his figure. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, as if everything was in silence. I have no strong vows, no promises to dry the stone, just a smile. Then the girl ran away, went to the big black vulture, rose in the wind, and immediately turned into a black spot and disappeared. Qinyan is still a teenager, the handsome white figure next to her is standing still, like a picture scroll. Chapter 34, The Crisis of Qingzhou City. Hukan's voice was long, and it took a long time to stop. Yi Futian sighed, as if he was very sad. The fairy left, and he always felt empty. Don't pretend, Qingzhou City originally belonged to Donghai Palace. Donghai City is the capital of Donghai Palace. You can directly cross the sea. I can't believe you don't know. Hua Fengliu glanced at the disciple next to him and said, You Ben, there is a thought to leave the world of glory, with the speed of your practice, up to a few months. Don't tell me that you don't know in your heart. Ah! Yi Futian blinked and looked at Hua Fengliu. Teacher, if you can give me some face, it will make me very dishonest to expose it like this. What move did you light last night? Flowers looked at Yi Futian with a smile. Yi Futian had a black face on his face and felt a lot of pressure. Finally, he understood what the difference between a teacher and a father-in-law was. The speed of changing his face should not be too fast. Seeing Yi Futian's embarrassment, Hua Fengli smiled and said, All right, I will practice here quietly until I reach the world of glory. Yes, master-in-law. Yi Futian blinked, knowing in seconds. It looked at the fairies for him. It seems that if he does not train to the world of glory, there is no freedom, so pitiful. Slippery mouth. Hua Fengliu smiled at the man in front of her, and said, I've only been learning piano songs recently, I'll teach you myself. Yi Fuxian nodded, and what the father-in-law said, did not dare to listen. Time passed every day, and the disciples in Qingzhou Zugong returned to Zugong to practice. All their life they also come here. Yi Fuxian sometimes joins the rest of his life to test at Tianyao Mountain, and sometimes he trains at another hospital or practices piano music. On this day, Yi Fuxian sat in the pavilion with his eyes closed to practice. Suddenly he felt something, his mind moved slightly, and the fire aura between heaven and earth seemed to be a substance, blooming with a fiery red light. The sun fell on the body. Yi Fuxian carried out the idea of watching freely, and felt the majestic aura between the heavens and the earth. Then, the endless flames were no longer the fire aura, but the world of fire, which surrounded Yi Fuxian's body. Around. Reiki comes true. Not far away, Hua Fengliu just walked towards this side, and couldn't show a smile when she looked at the scenery around Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian's eyes opened, and he whispered, Mages in the world of glory. Teacher. Yi Fuxian laughed and shouted when he saw the flowers coming. I will wait for you to break through the martial arts. Hua Fengliu smiled, and then handed a letter to Yi Fuxian, a letter from XCU, here it is. Written by a fairy. Yi Fuxian blinked his eyes, took the letter, and opened it. The letter wrote, Sexy man, I am not allowed to talk to other women while I am away. I hastily left this time to find out that I was wronged, but I promise you that when you come to Donghai City, I can compensate to you well. Good compensation. Yi Fuxian's eyes had a touch of light, and the perfect face of the fairy and the graceful curves of the knight appeared in his mind, thinking in his heart whether he should start now. This fairy, I know very well, this temptation is intolerable. How to reply? Hua Fengliu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. Teacher, would you like to take a peek? Yi Fuxian looked at Hua Fengliu's eyes, and couldn't help but stare. Futian wrote a letter outside the letter. How can you think of such a teacher? Hua Fengliu said solemnly. Yi Fuxian looked at him suspiciously, his eyes filled with disbelief. The letter bird is still there, you could say there's nothing more I can leave. Hua Fengliu changed the subject and said, Yi Fuxian was a little depressed, it was completely shameless. Come back, fairy, wait for me, teacher, please help me back. Yi Fuxian said calmly, when his father-in-law looked at him, how dare he speak back, if it was too easy. Okay. Hua Fengliu left with a smile, and the image of Wei An in Yi Fuxian's mind collapsed unconsciously. Oh, outside, a loud vibration came. Yi Fuxian only felt the earth shaking slightly. After a while, he saw a figure move, a loud sound, and the rest of his life fell to the ground. Cracks appeared on the ground. What happened? Yi Fuxian saw that for the rest of his life, naturally understanding that there must be a cause. There is a savage wave. The rest of his life said to Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian's eyes shone with a very sharp look. History books recorded that there were many pairs of beasts in the history of Qingzhou City. Every pair of beasts had brought Qingzhou City to near extinction. I don't know how many people lost their lives. Until 300 years ago, Qingzhou Zugong was built at the foot of Tianyao Mountain to guard against monsters, but fortunately, in the past 300 years, there has been no wave of beasts in Qingzhou City, and many people have gradually been forgotten. Yanhua Fengli's body shape also came to this side, looking at the rest of his life. The rest of your life, are you sure? The rest of his life nodded solemnly. Also, it may be artificial. I saw a strong person who has a law field to repel the monster. Man. Hua Fengliu and Yi Fuxian's faces were extremely ugly. If it were artificial, it would be a sinful crime. If the Chanyao Mountain beast riot comes out of the mountain, I don't know how many people will die. I will tell Qingzhou Zugong. Fuxian, you go to Qin Shuai's daughter, Hua Fengliu said. Yi Fuxian nodded. General Qin controls the Black Unicorn Army, is the patron saint of Qingzhou City, and resists the invasion of outsiders. However, if a beast wave breaks out, the power of the Black Unicorn Army will definitely be used. As for the main house of the city, it is not so reliable. The city man is an outsider and is appointed by the Donghai Prefecture. He had not lived in Qingzhou City for generations and could leave at any time. Romantic flashing flower body shape, leave it straight here. Let's go, Yi Fuxian said for the rest of his life. The two of them left another courtyard and walked towards the Qingzhou City Knights. The official disciples and outsiders of Qingzhou City are in different areas, and the Martial Arts Palace and Shufa Palace also have their own practice areas. The Budo Knights Palace is located on the slopes of a mountain. Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life immediately caught the attention of many people. Even among the official disciples, the two of them were very famous. After all, when Haihei Academy came, Qingzhou too many people in Zugong watched the battle. Are you okay? Someone asked when they saw them. I am looking for Sister Qin Yi, do you know where she is? Yi Futian asked. Anything urgent? The man looked at Yi Futian and said, after all, you have left Qingzhou Academy, and you can't enter it according to the rules. Hundreds of thousands of fires. Yi Futian said. Seeing that Yi Futian was very serious and didn't like to lie, the man said, Qin Yi practices horse riding and shooting in the training field. Go to him. Thank you very much. Yi Futian said, then he lifted his feet forward, but at this moment, several figures were standing in front of them. Mo Lanshan looked at Yi Futian coldly, and said, both people have left Qingzhou Zhugon, who will let you go? Brother. The man was a little awkward. You can go, Mo Lanshan said to Yi Futian. I am in a hurry to find Qin Yi. There may be a beast tied in Qingzhou City. Yi Futian remembered Mo Lanshan. When he had just awakened the soul, this fellow went to invite the rest of his life to join the knights, and went to humiliate himself for a while. A brother from the Spell Palace reminded him that Mo Lanshan likes Qin Yi, and now seeing him coming to Qin Yi, I am afraid that Mo Lanshan is very angry. Qingzhou City has not experienced ups and downs for more than 300 years. How can it suddenly appear without warning, and even if it does appear, it is not your turn to find out first? If you want to see Qin Yi, what are you doing? Make a decent excuse. Mo Lanshan replied coldly. He had said Yi Futian's bad words beside Qin Yi several times, but then the facts were very embarrassing. Even Qin Yi has some opinions on this matter. What is even more intolerable is that Yi Futian has been reckless to Qin Yi twice, and even hugged. I don't have time to argue with you, just let it go. Yi Futian is rare and serious, because the rest of his life is so sure that there will be no mistakes. If there is no preparation for the beast tide, I don't know how many people will die. Yi Mo Lanshan was so scolded by Yi Futian, and his face was very cold, thinking that Yi Futian must be because of his shame and hatred in the first place, and deliberately embarrassed him. I heard that Wajiayu has left Qingzhou City. Of course, even if it shows extraordinary talent, after all, some gaps cannot be bridged. So, did you change your goals again? Mo Lanshan sneered, thinking Yi Futian didn't catch up with Hua Jiu and started fighting Qin Yi's idea. Yes. The rest of his life stepped forward, and a fierce breath surrounded his body. The people around Mo Lanshan frowned, and his breath was also released. One of them said coldly, you better know this. Somewhere decide whether to do it. Yi Futian's eyes looked at Mo Lanshan, and his eyes flashed cold and cold. All my life, can you get it? Yi Futian said. No problem. The rest of his life nodded. Puck. Yi Futian's response was only one word. When his voice fell, a body filled with explosive power for the rest of his life rushed out. Chapter 35, Yikingdai. When the rest of my life stepped out, a golden light enveloped the body, as if it was covered with a layer of golden armor. Mo Moshan and others' eyes looked very dignified when they saw that they were holding spears. The left and right people left for the rest of their lives. I saw the blow from the rest of my life, and the air let out a crackling sound. His fist was also golden, and he directly hit the spear that stabbed him. The spear pierced the fist for a lifetime, and it made a clicking sound, which broke instantly. I wonder how terrifying the power of a flesh fist is. Yi Futian's body continues to move forward. At this time there is no time, and these people are wasting time here. But Mo Lanshan didn't seem to want to let him go. For the rest of his life, the cold light on Mo Lanshan's spear was directed at Yi Futian. Yi Futian's footsteps did not stop. His body ran slowly, his arms stretched out, and a terrifying thunder light flashed through his body. With a wave of his palm, a terrifying storm directly hit Mo Lanshan. Spell out of the body, glorify the mage. The knights watching the battle around, their hearts trembled. This exercise is too fast, right? Master Mage had a natural advantage against knights. Although Mo Lanshan is a Samsung Glory Knight, he does not underestimate the enemy, especially the person he is facing is Yi Futian. A terrifying war flowed on the puppet's spear and turned into a curtain of white light. Then the spear flooded, the battle covered the whole body, and the lightning spell died, but Mo Lanshan's marksmanship was impenetrable. Yi Futian's steps did not stop, and he continued to approach Mo Lanshan. As a mage, he was supposed to keep his distance from knights during battle, but he ignored this and showed how confident he was. Proud. Mo Lanshan's face was embarrassed, and then he saw Yi Futian's hand cut down, and at the same time, the terrifying power of thunder turned into a straight lightning light, cutting into his defensive light curtain. Breaking straight from the middle. Spell, Sky Thunder spell. Although it is an awakening level spell, Yi Futian is released in today's realm, converging the power of thunder strong enough to explode. And the power is still glorious, not to mention, Yi Futian's perception as a major destiny is also beyond ordinary people. The magic power they release must be stronger than those in the same world. The ray of thunder that cut through everything continued to chop down, and the spear on Mo Lanshan shook, turning into a weapon shadow, shaking in front of the thunder spell. But almost at the same time, Yi Futian seemed to have turned into a fiery flame, and a terrifying fire shot out of him, covering Mo Lanshan's body. The spell burned silently, and devoured the aura of the flame. It was large, but its destructive power was also extremely terrifying and belonged to a melee spell. Mo Lanshan's face changed greatly, and the heaven and earth aura on his body was extremely excited and turned into a light defensive curtain. It felt like it was covered with layers of armor to resist the erosion of silenced spells. Yi Fuxian's attack was almost too late to deal with it. This was a terrifying spell of a dual attribute mage which could continuously release different attribute spells in a very short period of time. Boom! A fist hit the head of the weak defense. Mo Lanshan's body was directly smashed to the ground. The blood was raging. This scene was bloody and cruel. Yi Fuxian straddled Mo Lanshan's body directly, and continued to move forward. He was too lazy to look at her. Those who witnessed the battle mourned in silence for Mo Lanshan. Although Yi Fuxian didn't say anything shameful, this abandonment was even more embarrassing. Master Mage, still stronger than martial arts practitioners. Of course, Yi Fuxian was no ordinary mage. However, when everyone saw another battlefield, the rest of their lives killed several high-level martial arts practitioners with their own strength. They felt a little messy. The rest of their lives did not use magic power, but pure martial arts power. Both monsters. When Yi Fuxian came to the training ground, he saw Qin Yizheng sitting on the black unicorn to practice riding and shooting. At this time, Qin Yi, who was tying his hair and wearing a tight suit, looked bright and charming, and his hot body was tight. The clothes were even more seductive, but Yi Fuxian didn't have time to appreciate at this moment, shouting, "Brother Qin!" Qin Yi heard a scream and looked at Yi Fuxian, showing a doubtful expression. Then he sat down, and the black unicorn ran towards Yi Fuxian. Qin Yi said from a distance, "Why are you here?" Jian Yashan might run out of waves, sister, she quickly informed General Qin. Yi Fuxian said. Qin Yimai's eyes flashed, and his face changed, his legs were cut off, and the black unicorn ran. Qin Yi shouted as he passed Yi Fuxian, "Go up and talk while walking." Yi Fuxian's eyes flashed, and without hesitation, the body ran towards the black unicorn, jumped up, and sat firmly behind Qin Yi. What happened? Qin Yi was a little worried. The beast tide was definitely a disaster. The rest of my life is training in Tianyao Mountain, and I encountered a savage wave, Yi Fuxian replied. Qin Yi looked dignified and said, "Hug me." Ah! Yi Fuxian froze, and then felt his body unbalanced. The black unicorn rose directly into the air and flew sideways into the air. Yi Fuxian could only hold Qin Yi forward with both hands. He couldn't help but smile and shook his head, thinking, "Fairy, this is not intentional." The people below looked up, and when they saw this scene, all the martial arts palaces were speechless. So this shameless bastard is so flattering on a beautiful woman. First, Yjiu left, and now they have come to harm their goddess Qin Yi. Bastard! Mo Lanshan saw this scene as soon as he came over. Bang! The rest of my life did not know when he came back, and punched him right in the face, and poor Mo Lanshan fell to the ground again. After crushing Mo Lanshan, the rest of his life glanced at Yi Fuxian, who had left with the beauty in the air, and returned to the same path alone, complaining in his heart, "What a bastard." Above the city of Qingzhou, the black unicorn walked all the way, very fast, and the wind blew in his face. The two men's movements were a bit ambiguous, but at this moment they didn't have time to take care of them. They just want to get to their destination quickly. But before they arrived, they saw a dark sky in the distance, and saw a group of black unicorns covering the sky. Seeing this scene, Yi Fuxian's eyes lit up. Could it be that General Qin Shui got the news? Soon after, the two sides met in mid-air, and the head of the group saw Qin Yi slightly flustered and shouted, "Miss. What are you?" Qin Yi was also confused. "The beast wave is about to erupt in Qingzhou City, and we are rushing to Tianyao Mountain," the man said. "I came for this too. It seems my father already knows. What about the others?" Qin Yi asked. "There is something to deal with on the shores of Qingzhou Lake behind. Let's hurry first." "All right, you go, I will find my father." Qin Yi nodded, and then the two sides came forward, and many knights in the Black Unicorn army looked at Yi Fuxian behind Qin Yi. Qingzhou Lakeshore, outside a restaurant, was surrounded by the Black Kirin army at this time, which immediately caused many people to watch. General Qin Shui personally directed people to surround the restaurant. What happened? When Yi Yetian and Qin Yi arrived, they naturally saw the situation here. They walked behind Qin Shui and did not interfere. Perhaps Qin Shui had something to deal with at this time. In the restaurant, a group of people slowly walked out. The person in charge was a young man. Yi Fuxian frowned when he saw this group of people. Many people here have seen it at the end of the year. It was Chia Fan in Donghai Prefecture. General Qin wants to go for 2 drinks. Chia Fan looked at Qin Shui with a smile, his eyes were lazy, and his attitude was light. "This is yours?" Qin Shui asked coldly. "I don't understand what General Qin is talking about." Chia Fan played with the wine glass without looking at Qin Shui. "Jian Yaoshan monster riot, for the sake of your greed, put the entire Qingzhou city in danger." Qin Shui continued to ask. "I said I don't understand what you're talking about, and noticed your attitude towards me. Chia Fan narrowed his eyes, his attitude was arrogant, as if he did not put the patron saint of Qingzhou in his eyes. When Chia Xiafan's words fell, there were several figures next to him who took a step forward. Suddenly this world has a strong compulsion. The city's main government house and the Murong Chamber of Commerce are also participating in it together. Qin Shuai looked at Wei Feng and Murong Qiu, and his sharp eyes made them lower their heads. Afraid to look directly into Qin Shuai's eyes, Tilda gaze returned to Chia Fan's body, and said coldly, "You are going to use Qingzhou City to spread your ambition. I have sent people to various places in Donghai Prefecture for sightseeing. Qingzhou City has the remains." Qin Shuai turned and left. Chia Fan's face became very ugly in an instant. Staring at Qin Shuai's back, his eyes had killed the mind. Qin Shuai, how dare to break his affairs? After discovering the secret of Tianyao Mountain, he sent someone back to Donghaifu, and his father sent a teacher to make him invisible. The news of Qin Shuai walking over would definitely cause shocks from all sides. Merely, Qin Shuai knew the secret of the old Tianyao Mountain. Qin Shuai led the army of black unicorns straight into the air. Qin Yi followed Yi Futian and came to Qin Shuai. "Father, what happened?" Qin Yi asked. "Who are those people?" "Girl, Qingzhou City is in trouble, and I don't know what will happen." Qin Shuai looked at Qin Yi and said, "Qingzhou City is under the jurisdiction of Donghai Prefecture. Just now his name was Chia Fan and came from Donghai Prefecture. That is the main son of the Donghaifu government. When he came to Qingzhou City, I kept an eye on him, knowing that he sent someone to sneak into Tianyao Mountain to look for secrets, but he didn't expect that he was actually found." Jian Yaoshan, secret. Qin Yi was even more confused. "You were not born many years ago. My master has always wanted to eradicate the demons of Tianyao Mountain. He has made people go deep into it. After paying such a high price, he found that it was an impossible task. However, he found a relic on Tianyao Mountain." Qin Shuai revealed his eyes and his eyes were stunned, and he still couldn't forget the shock when he saw the scene. "What's in there?" Qin Yi asked. "Yi Qingdai." Qin Shuai leaked Qin Yi and spat out a taboo name. Chapter 36, Internal and External Matters. At this moment, his face turned red instantly, and a fist punched Yi Futian's chest, whispering, "You bastard." He said hastily and turned around. Yi Futian trembled with a smile, and said, "Relax, there will be nothing wrong with General Qin in Qingzhou City, and General Qin will be safe and sound." Qin Yi nodded, knowing that Yi Futian was deliberately easing his emotions. "You can't go down yet." Qin Yi blushed. Yi Futian jumped down very honestly, walked forward, looked forward, with a little worry in his heart, not as easy as he showed. This is a big wave, and he can comfort Qin Yi the best, but can't help much. The news of the beasts immediately swept through Qingzhou City, and all the major forces had dispatched. It is related to the life and death of Qingzhou City. Nothing can stand alone. The practitioners in Qingzhou City have come to this side to support and help block the demons. Mountain, if you don't do this, once the monsters enter Qingzhou City in large numbers, the hometown will suffer a disaster. In Qingzhou City, there is a peerless army of soldiers heading towards Qingzhou Academy. These soldiers walk or ride birds and beasts. The ground made a rumbling sound. Wherever it passed, Qingzhou the people in the city look surprised. There is Qingzhou Wei under the command of the main city government. It seems that there are people from the Murong Chamber of Commerce, but who are the others? The people in Qingzhou City wondered. Someone saw the pattern engraved on the clothes among the people, and his face was extremely ugly. It is a man from Heiji Academy, and the powerful city of Haiking is here. How can Qingzhou City and Huacheng are old enemies, how can the Qingzhou Guard led by the city owner be with the Lucheng army? I do not know. Everyone's heart trembled, and there was news of a beast there. Not only did Qingzhou Wei not fight against the beasts with Qingzhou Zugong and the Black Kirin army, but also with the people in Huacheng. Restless emotions rose in the heart, and something serious might happen in Qingzhou City. The mighty army headed straight for Qingzhou Zugong. When they arrived, the strong people in Qingzhou Zugong were still resisting the invasion of the monsters and the Black Unicorn army. The arrival of such a large army immediately caught everyone's attention. Many disciples in Qingzhou Zugong saw strong people descending from the air and land and staying there one by one. Weiming, Qin Shuai stepped out of his figure, looked at the main protector of the city of Qingming, Weiman, the look on his face. You are not only a demon out of the mountain, but even colluded with the Qiongcheng people. This is the city you rule over. I don't understand what you're saying. What I'm doing right now is just acting on orders, Wei Ming said coldly. Chia Fan, what are you going to do? Qin Shuai's eyes glanced at Chia Fan in the crowd, and Chia Fan's eyes flashed an evil light. He looked at Qin Shuai, the private army in the island city, with disdain. The commander was so arrogant that he dared to surround him. Where is the lord of Zugong Qingzhou Palace? Chia Fan ignored Qin Shuai directly and looked back. In the direction of Qingzhou Zugong, a figure came out. The figure was grey-haired and pale, but his temperament was still extraordinary. It was Gongmu, the lord of Qingzhou Zugong Palace. He did not ask for foreign affairs and practiced with all his heart. If it was a savage wave, it wouldn't even appear. What is Xiaofuju's purpose for doing this? Gu Mu asked Chia Fan. Jian Yaoshan has been whipped by Qingzhou City for many years. As the owner of Xiaofu in Donghai Prefecture, I came to Qingzhou City after learning about it and discussed with the city owner how to prevent this problem. Therefore, I gathered Qingzhou Wei, Chamber of Murong Trade, and Tancheng City. Together, they are preparing to attack Tianyao Mountain. I wonder if the ancient palace lord and General Qin can cooperate. Chia Fan asked with a smile. Gumu flew with white hair, and his appearance was not very good. Today Qingzhou Zugong Palace can be described as internal and external troubles, tidal attacks, and then a large army comes. If you don't agree, Qingzhou Zugong Palace will probably be destroyed. Okay, Gu Mu nodded. The ancient palace master really thinks about Qingzhou City. General Qin is the patron saint of Qingzhou City. I believe the same is true. Chia Fan looked at Qin Shuai again. Disgraceful. Many people in Qingzhou Zugong scolded Chia Fan secretly and stared at him coldly. Many strong people in Jicheng gathered. What conditions did you promise? Qin Shuai asked. General Qin, Wu Cheng just listened to the call. What is his condition? The situation is urgent. He also hopes that General Qin will come to a decision soon. Chia Fan was arrogant, and he was surrounded by strong people who were transferred from Donghai Prefecture. Afraid. Okay. Qin Shuai teaching promised with a face, and of course he knew that Chia Fan forced him to deal with monsters, but at least attacking Tianyao Mountain and killing monsters could reduce the loss of Qingzhou City. If he didn't agree, both sides would fight the beast. With the tide, Qingzhou City will be worse off. Very good, then, let's go. Chia Fan smiled. Master Xiaofu, I want to be alone. At this time, a strong man in Heiyanzong said to Chia Fan. Oh, Chia Fan laughed, who would? The middle-aged man looked down and fell on a young man. Yi Futian, who was under the cicada, had a bad feeling. This person was an eagle-eyed middle-aged man who led Heiji Academy to challenge Qingzhou Academy. Yi Futian, have you left Qingzhou Academy? Ying asked with a smile in middle age. What advice do seniors have? Yi Futian responded with a smile. I asked you to join my last Kuroshio Academy. You didn't agree. I saw you again this time, so ask. The juniors have really left Qingzhou Academy, but they only worship other teachers, afraid of disappointing the seniors. Yi Futian responded. Oh, who's that? The man asked. I. Hua Fengliu stood weakly in the crowd. It doesn't matter, even if you have a teacher. It still doesn't prevent you from coming to Haiyan Academy to train. Eagle Eyes still refused to let go, and said with a smile. Heiling Zugong is informal. I believe that Qin Mo's predecessor will not hinder the future of the disciples. Chia Fan also said at this time, but he did not expect to be the boy who spent the night with Hua Ziyu. Heiling Zugong can't teach it, Hua Fengliu said lightly. Romantic flowers, do you want to try? Among the crowd of Heiyanzong, an old man who closed his eyes suddenly said, his eyes opened like a flash of lightning towards a romantic flower. Predecessors Qin Mo, don't embarrass me. Chia Fan smiled, and the strong person next to him took a step forward. If it was the former Qin Mo, they would not dare to provoke it, but Qin Mo Shu's life and soul were wiped away. To retreat, they were not afraid at all. Qiu Huafeng let out a breath, but he looked at Yi Futian with a smile. Seniors are highly valued, it is an honor for the younger ones, and my teacher will naturally have no opinion. Yi Hua saw Yi Futian quickly, and he naturally knew Yi Futian's character. This boy was very intelligent and simply said coldly, if something goes wrong with my students, don't blame me. Elderly rest assured. The middle-aged eagle eye smiled Yi Futian, but the character who defeated Yun Tianhao, if it can naturally be the best black school, can't accept it, then get rid of it. The rest of his life traces came. Yi Futian shook his head as if he knew it, then he stopped and was furious. Two young men and women walked out of Kuroman Academy, and the woman smiled and said, since Yishi agreed to join Kuroman Academy, I am not happy to come. Xe Yi Futian nodded, headed towards the crowd of Heiji Academy, and glanced at the young woman's sexy body, smiling, I know I have a beautiful younger sister in Heiji Academy, I agreed last time. The little one is really talking, the sexy woman giggled. Brother must take care of his brother and sister in the future. Yi Futian naturally held the arm of the sexy woman, the woman did not care, and smiled more and more brightly. No problem, my brother should take good care of you. So shameless. The people in Qingzhou Zugong scolded Yi Futian when they saw this scene. Traitor. How could there be such a shameless person in Qingzhou Zugong? Many people couldn't help but scream and scream. Qin Yaimei looked over there, his eyes slightly disappointed. Wu Xiaofan saw this scene grinning. Hua Fengliu seeing her daughter's lover is so unbearable, I don't know how I feel. However, he saw that Hua Fengliu's expression was calm as usual. He thought that Hua Fengliu didn't know that his disciples had collaborated with Hua Jiu. But with this man's shameless character, it's quite possible. An uncomfortable character, but can have a beautiful like Wajiayu, with violence. Feng Liu wasn't too surprised since she knew the man well. Well, it's time to go, Chia Fan said lightly, apparently very satisfied with all of this. Chapter 37, Statue and Panlong. Da Jun's army was advancing on the mighty Tianyao Mountain, and Qingzhou City had never carried out a large-scale operation. The Qiu Tianyao Mountain area was active and vast, several times larger than the main urban area of Qingzhou City. It is impossible to imagine how many monsters there are in Tianyao Mountain. The ancestors of the previous generation thought of cleaning up Tianyao Mountain, but in the end, it was just an exaggerated expectation. Today, under the persecution of Chia Fan, Qingzhou Academy and the Black Unicorn Army guarding Qingzhou City, the army stepped into Tianyao Mountain, plus the Qingzhou Guard and Army Corps behind, seemed to be fiercer than the beast tide for a while. The Black Unicorn Army charged and the Qingzhou Academy of Gongshu Magic Palace opened the way to force the monsters to return to Tianyao Mountain, but Qin Shuai did not feel a little excited. In this way, active attacks were equivalent to completely releasing defense, and there would be a lot of monsters. The beast leaked into Qingzhou City and went berserk, but since it had, they could only kill as many monsters as possible. Take the good path. Chia Fan walked in the middle and talked to the middle-aged man in front of him, and they made a mark when they went to Tianyao Mountain to find the ruins. He Futian and the man from Haihei Zugong walked behind. He discovered that the woman beside him was named Tang Yue. He is 20 years old. She was indeed beautiful in appearance, and she had a hint of glamorous beauty. After a while, Futian and Tang Yue mingled. Brother, you must be very beautiful if you are so beautiful. Futian said. What do you ask? Tang Yue looked at him with a smile. Do I have a chance? Futian looked at Tang Yudao. Tang Yue blinked. Pu laughs. It looks very handsome, but it is a bit small. Brother, 16 adults, not very young. Futian said earnestly. Tang Yue smiled when he saw her expression, and the youth in Haihei Academy next to him smiled from time to time. As a flower, can't help but stare at Futian fiercely. Sister, do you know what purpose we stepped into Tianyao Mountain this time? Futian asked. Listen to the elders that there are ancient ruins on Tianyao Mountain. Futian shook his head and said, Brother, I'm telling you a secret. He whispered into Tang Yu's ear, in Tianyao Mountain, there is a cheat for training left by Emperor Yi King. Tang Yu's complexion instantly became dignified, watching Futian whisper, What are you talking about? Futian's eyes flickered. It seems that Chia Fan is hiding and not saying it. No wonder, it is about Yi King Dai. Chia Fan naturally has some reservations. Feng Liu is my teacher. I also know General Qin, so I know this secret, otherwise you think why there is such a big battle. Futian was serious. You are waiting for me here. Tang Yue left after finishing speaking. Futian saw him walking in front of the old man who was trying to challenge the teacher, and then returned to Futian. You follow me. Futian came to the old man and saw the old man's eyes closed and said, Where did you hear the news? What is the identity of the senior at Haihei Academy? Futian asked. The old man opened his eyes, the corners of his eyes shone, and said, What do you mean? Heiyu Academy, I naturally want to worship the strongest. Futian said. Tang Mo, old master of the Black School, if you succeed in the future, I can consider tutoring you personally. The old man said lightly, and Tang Yue next to him smiled and said, My grandfather. Futian bowed to worship, and Huku said, Since he is the lord of the palace, as well as Grandpa Tang, the juniors don't dare to hide it. There is a rumor in Qingzhou City. The legendary Chinese god Yi King Dai came out of Qingzhou City. There is an inheritance in Qingzhou City. Qingzhou City, he can inherit his mantle and get his cheat. Many people think it is just a legend, but the fact is this is a fact. The inheritance is in Tianyao Mountain. General Qin Shuai has seen it with his own eyes. Why didn't he take it? Tang Mo's eyes were sharp. Senior, how can Yi King Dai's inheritance be so easy to obtain? If it was simple, Chia Fan would launch such a battle. Futian said. Tang Mo narrowed his eyes and looked at Futian. Do you know how to trick me? I didn't know in advance that my senior was in the drums, just chatting with Sister Tang Yue. How dare she cheat? But Chia Fan summoned the strong side of Donghai Prefecture, but used the people of Qingzhou City and Jiaqing to deal with monsters. I am worried this is speculative, Futian said. Are you in divorce? Tang Mo's eyes were very sharp, and a strong breath oppressed Futian's body. When the predecessor arrives at the ruins, he can see for himself whether Chia Fan has deceived his predecessor. If the younger person says wrong, life and death are in the hands of the predecessor. If I tell the truth, the predecessor must be careful. Futian said. Why? Tang Mo asked. I don't know what Chia Fan promised his predecessors, but what Yi King Dai's inheritance means is clearer to me. When people and horses and monsters kill each other cleanly, and the inheritance of the inheritance will be at your fingertips, it will be very easy to kill people and kill them later. Beware of that, Yi Fuxian solemnly said. At this time the roar of the army was constantly roaring, and the surrounding area was also blocked by the powerful Heizu Zugong. No need to worry about the sound coming out. Do you hate the owner of Xiaofu? Tang Mo suddenly asked. Yi Fuxian looked up. Tang Mo's eyes were sharp. He nodded for a moment, and then nodded. Of course, Xia Fan did not use any means to achieve his goal, and triggered a wave of beasts, and Qingzhou City is my hometown, not to mention, I see. I let it succeed. I am afraid it is also difficult to escape. If the predecessors don't believe it, forget it. If they believe, the flower is my teacher, and General Qin also knows me. Even if the enemy cooperates once again, it is not bad. If you Qingdai inherited, it is worthy of revenge. Remember that, at that time, you will take a boat to the vast East China Sea to practice, and the sky will serve as a flying bird. Tang Yue, drop him. Tang Mo suddenly said with a calm face. Tang Yue went to Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian owed Tang Mo, and then left here with Tang Yue without saying a word. What do you think? Tang Mo asked the eagle-eyed man beside him. This kid has a terrible mouth, can't believe it, but he can't believe it. The key is to see if it is the remains of Emperor Yi King. The man with the eagle eyes said. What if it's true? Tang Mo said again. Father, if it is Yi Qingdai's legacy, how much less is Qingzhou City, even what is the entire East China Sea? The expression in the eagle man's eyes suddenly became sharp, and Tang Mo's eyes showed a dazzling light. I had the intention of being estranged, but I wasn't wrong. I really got what Emperor Yi King left behind. Jiangao Ren Fei Fei, East China Sea, who can find it? You think he can get it for us? Tang Mo asked again. Eagle's eyes flashed, and then he shook his head. This son is too demonic, both natural and mental, to control. It's true that Chan Hao is proud of nature and only practices spiritually. This is different. Tang Mo nodded. Although Chan Hao lost to him in the beginning, but after all he is a destiny mage. He will only become stronger in the future. Now he has gone to Donghai City to study, and he will be able to return in the future. If he can't conquer. The middle-aged eagle eye looked at Tang Mo. The two were silent. Da Jun marched all the way, traveling very fast. I don't know how many monster bones have been trampled on the road, but also suffered a terrible impact. Both Qingzhou Academy and the Black Unicorn Cavalry suffered heavy casualties. The fog on the Tiantian Demon Mountain became heavier and heavier. If you look down from the sky, you can only see chaos. There is no way to mark the position in the air, otherwise Xia Fan will not use this method to move forward. On this day, Qingzhou Zugong Palace Master and Qin Shui found Xia Fan together, and said indifferently, if the Black Kirin Army and others in Qingzhou Zugong stand still, we will return. Are you threatening me? Xia Fan looked at Qin Shui. Whatever you think. Qin Shui responded lightly. Now he was no longer in Qingzhou City. At that moment, he faced Xia Fan's savage waves and two-sided siege. Any terms must be promised. Now that he has broken through to Tianya Mountain and Xia Fan also don't dare to push too hard. Okay, Xia Fan compromised, and then shouted back, Palace Master Tang. Tang Mo nodded, and then ordered the strong people from the Blackbird Academy to fight. Yi Fuxian also came with him. The monsters in the foggy area are becoming more and more powerful, and sometimes there are high-level monsters of the same level. Only the elders can handle it. Time passed day by day, and fewer people were moving forward. In addition, those who are injured are more cultivated. Weak people are protected in the back, and they won't let them die, so it's safer. When he was in danger, Yi Fuxian ran into the crowd of the Black School Academy. Naturally, he was very safe. He will not go to war for the Black School Academy. Even though many people saw his eyes filled with disdain, after all, he would care finally. When they arrived at a fairly deep area, they found that the fog was gradually dissipating, and the light in this area was now the same as the outside world, and even a little brighter. The aura of the heavens and the earth became more intense. Congested. A little. There seems to be a burst of aura here, and there is a foggy area outside, isn't it? Someone said. Yes, here it is. The strong man next to Xia Fan showed his sharp face and continued to move forward. Everyone found that there were no monsters in these mountains, and no one had appeared. What's that? Someone exclaimed, pointing towards the front. As the approach came, the scene ahead became clearer, and people's hearts skipped a beat. They saw a huge statue emerge from the valley and stand in the mountains. Everyone trembled. They continued to approach, standing on the ancient peak in front of the valley, and looking at the statue that was taller than the mountain ahead. This area is full of aura. Look down. Go to the edge of the top of the mountain, there is a canyon below, and the statue is there. Someone trembled and pointed at the canyon. Under the huge statue, there was a dragon, a real dragon, coiled above it. It was like a lump of flesh, but at this moment, the dragon closed his eyes, as if he was asleep. It's a dragon. Many people in Qingzhou Zugong trembled. Yi Fuxian's eyes also flashed a dazzling light. This dragon was very similar to the dragon shadow that appeared while hunting last fall. In addition to the statue and the dragon, in the canyon, there are many large demon discs around the statue, which absorb the aura greedily. Here, like the Valley of All Beasts. Yikingdai. Someone stared at the statue in front of him, letting out a startling sound. 26 years ago, Yikingdai became a taboo, and none of his statues were allowed in the world, but at this time, a huge statue of the King Emperor appeared. Chapter 38. A Bad Life. The huge statue in front of him looked alive and majestic. Rumo's black hair was scattered on his shoulders. His eyes are divine. He seems to be able to penetrate people's hearts. Just looking at the statue, he could faintly feel its unique style. Emperor Yi King, the legend of the Eastern Divine Kingdom, was often taboo, even though it was taboo. Now that I heard someone say these 3 words, many people trembled, and there was a statue of the legendary Yikingdai hidden in Tianyao Mountain in Qingzhou City. Xinlong the seat. Surely there are remnants of Emperor Yi King. Tangmo, the lord of Haihei Academy Palace, squinted and stared at the front. In this way, Xia Fan was deliberately deceived. Qin Shuai stared long at the canyon below, frowning. When he followed the teacher here many years ago, he did not see this long. Just statues and monsters, these dragons came later. Yes, these are the remains of Yikingdai. There is an entrance under the statue, which may contain the treasures of the King Emperor. Even if it is not left behind by the King Emperor, this dragon is a dead dragon, and its body is a treasure. Xia Fan pointed down, he said. There was a touch of greed in his eyes. If it weren't for the many monsters entangled below, he would have started it himself. Master Xiao, these monsters are very strong. At this time Tangmo stepped forward and said, the big demon below is different from other monsters, it seems to be very lazy, as if to underestimate him at all, still lying there. So all parties must cooperate, Xia Fan said. I didn't expect Emperor Yi King to be a person in Qingzhou City, and he has inherited it. The leader of the Xiao government hid me pitifully, Tangmo said hesitantly. Xia Fan's evil eyes glanced at Tangmo, and then he laughed. I don't know Yikingdai's ancestral home in Qingzhou City not long ago, but it is unknown whether the statue is his inheritance. I didn't tell the Tang Palace master beforehand that he was afraid of leaking the wind. Not surprisingly. Tangmo nodded, but did not expect that Yi Futian said it was true. Yikingdai, who was born in Qingzhou City. He didn't know that Yi Futian in the crowd was silent at this time. He spoke nonsense and couldn't verify it all. He didn't expect Xia Fan to admit that Yikingdai was really a person from Qingzhou City. We have to start. Xia Fan said. However, the words fell, but no one moved, and no one was willing to charge for Xia Fan at this time. General Qin, Lord of the Ancient Palace. Xia Fan narrowed his eyes and looked at Qin Shuai. People have arrived here. I will not let the Black Kirin army and Qingzhou Zugong die. Qin Shuai spoke coldly and looked at the number of monsters below. If a battle broke out, ordinary practitioners would definitely only be cannon fodder, pure to ward off the monster. Master Shaofu, the monster in the herd. If the battle is bound to be fatal, what will we get if we succeed on the King Emperor? Tangmo said. Xia Fan's eyes bulged, and then a smile appeared. It seems that Yi Futian and he are on the way. What was Tangmo talking about? Uncle. Xia Fan looked at the man in black next to him, and saw that the low-skinned man came out. The next moment, a Lingtian sword exploded from him, rolling up a violent storm of sword gases. Everyone is veiled. Many people trembled in their hearts, only feeling the endless sword, and it could be crushed at any time. Jian Weijing. Hua Fengliu looked cold, but did not expect that Xia Fan actually sent Jian Weijing from Donghai City, and it was his uncle, Yikingdai's inheritance. He really had a hard time trusting the other subordinates. Lu Tangmo's face became ugly in an instant, and he turned around and gave Yi Futian a cold look at the crowd, and he was very sad. Do you have any more questions? Xia Fan sneered scornfully, all of which could not escape his control. The Black Unicorn army can fight and let the young disciples of Qingzhou Academy go, Qin Shuai said. Seek death. Xia Fan glanced at him, his uncle suddenly cut the sword, as if to destroy the void. Qin Shuai sat down with a black hiss and hissed, and then slammed directly, smashing the sword across the sky. Qin Shuai's arm was severed. General. The people from the Black Unicorn Legion stepped forward, their breaths horrified for a while. Father. Qin Yi in the back crowd exclaimed, looking pale. However, I saw the black man flying in the sky, the sword adorning the storm. Are there any questions? Xia Fan's voice was slightly louder and extremely cold. The Black Unicorn army can fight and let the young disciples of Qingzhou Zugong withdraw. Qin Shuai spoke again, still the exact same words. The broken arm was still bleeding, but he looked at Xia Fan very calmly. Xia Xiafan looked ugly and looked at Qin Shuai coldly. Before that, Qin Shuai dared to surround him and threatened to spread the word. He had to make a quick decision. At this time, he also needed Qin Shuai's strength. I promise to you. Xia Fan's eyes were cold, and then he looked at Tangmo. Do you have any comments from the Tang Palace Master? I want to hear orders from Master Shaofu. Tang Mo had to agree, and he didn't use Qin Shuai's courage. That's the problem, let's go. Chia Fan ordered nonchalantly, and everyone marched towards the bottom. The Black Kirin Legion was very brave and headed towards the sky. In midair, Chia Fan looked at all of this indifferently from behind. First, he had to test how strong these monsters were. Don't want to die. Just then, a thick voice came out from the canyon, making everyone's movement stiffen there, and then the crowd looked at the monster in the canyon with their heads. The white monster with white skin stood up. The next moment, its body continued to grow big, like a hill. When it stood up, all the monsters in the canyon stood up at the same time, and the monsters swept the world. How could it be? Chia Fan saw the look of horror on this face, and there was a demon lord in the canyon. How can there be a king in Qingzhou City? His face was very ugly, and then he saw the statue of Emperor Yi King. Is it the demon of the guardian statue? Everyone looked at this scene in horror. It was a snow monkey, standing tall, with a huge body full of invincible strength. Come in, die. The snow ape roared, the world seemed to tremble violently, and the mountains shook. Sorry, Chia Fan said, his eyes twitched. This time, did I leave? In addition, many people are missing. In the end, it turned out to be empty, but only glanced at the statue of Yi King Dai. Everyone retreated from the ancient peak. Tang Mo said, there is nothing the master can do about it. I saw Chia Fan's gloomy face that seemed to be holding back the anger to let go. You, go alone. Chia Fan opened his mouth to Tang Mo. Tang Mo's face was stiff, very ugly. Chia Xiao, Tang Gongzhu was also provoked by others to do something wrong. At this time, when Murong Qiu walked up to Chia Fan and opened his mouth, Chia Fan flashed and looked at Yi Futian in the crowd, with a sneer smile. Yi Futian had a bad feeling in his heart. He originally wanted to divorce the other party, but didn't expect it to happen in the end. Facing absolute power, Tang Mo could only lower his head. Yes, I was also challenged by Yi Futian. He said that he would cooperate with Qingzhou Academy and Qin Shuai to deal with Master Xiaofu. Tang Mo looked at Yi Futian, and Tang Yue next to Yi Futian was a bit ugly. Right now he really treats Yi Futian as a friend. Yes, it turns out that Qingzhou Zugong sent it on purpose. So, Qingzhou Zugong will also deal with me. Chia Fan's voice was cold and cold. Master Xiaofu, this rebellious son, has been expelled from Qingzhou Academy. It is absolutely not my Qingzhou Academy. My Qingzhou Academy can't wait to personally cut him off. Shixing Palace Master Shi Zhong said. Is that true? Chia Fan looked at the Qingzhou Zugong ancient tree. Gumu glanced at the romantic flower, then looked at Yi Futian, nodded. This is really not my Qingzhou Thought Academy. Therefore, whichever one of you kills him first, I will believe him. Chia Fan smiled with a cute smile. I will kill him. Shi Zhong stepped forward. Tang Lin's body flashed, and he also went towards Yi Futian. They deliberately got rid of Yi Futian, and even without Chia Fan's intention, Yi Futian would have died. A figure appeared quietly beside Yi Futian. Hua Fengliu glanced at Shi Zhong and Tang Lin and said, Aren't you there like me? Senior Qin Mo, I suggest you better not worry about it. Chia Fan smiled. Your father doesn't dare talk to me like that. Hua Fengliu looked at Chia Fan. Qin Mo's predecessor also said it was the thing of the year. Chia Fan sneered, I'm in a bad mood right now, so don't mess with me. His voice dropped. The man in black next to him took a step forward, and a terrifying sword swept straight towards the flower. I have a bad temper, so it's best not to mess with me. Hua Fengliu spoke calmly. Unused Qin demon, what will happen to me if I have a bad temper? I want to see it. The black man stepped forward. The sword chi was more and more terrifying, as if to tear space. Teacher. Yi Futian looked at Hua Fengliu. He was a little worried about his teacher. This person is in the heavenly realm, outside the far. There was no one this strong at the Qingzhou city level. He doesn't know the realm of the teacher, but other people are so confident. He was afraid that something was wrong with his teacher. After the soul is removed, he repairs that he has fallen under the heavens. The middle-aged man next to Chia Fan spoke faintly, seemingly confirming Yi Futian's conjecture. Teacher, I have a bad life, don't despair for me. Yi Futian said after he turned around and fled, and said loudly, Tell the fairy for me, I really like it, and tell my elder father for me. I can't help him expect it. The words that followed me were clear for the rest of my life. Moreover, the direction in which Yi Futian fled was turned out to be Monster Canyon. Yi Futian's eyes were red at this moment, and it was really uncomfortable to think that he had been a little depressed all his life. Chase. Chia Fan said coldly, and several strong men rushed out at the same time, chasing and killing Yi Futian. Chapter 39, I'm waiting for you. Obviously, Fenghua Meri didn't expect Yi Futian to be so firm, and he immediately explained the consequences. His body ran in the direction where Yi Futian was, but he saw a volley sword slash and block his path. Yi Futian, turn back for me, Hua Fengliu shouted loudly. You have to consider yourself. The man in black from the sky stepped forward. His body seemed to have boundless sword meaning. He crossed his arms, and suddenly a row of sharp swords appeared in front of him. Go! Hua Fengliu roared. A terrifying invisible power came, and a row of sharp swords stopped in front of him, shaking furiously. When the two reached a stalemate, Hua Fengliu saw Shizhong and Tang Lin chasing Yi Fuxian straight into the canyon, and his heart twitched fiercely. The dark black hair was automatically windless, and the dust on his feet rose, like a mental storm. I said, I have a bad temper, why do you want to force me? Hua Fengliu's voice trembled slightly, and an endless sense of guilt rose in his heart. Yi Fuxian, his life has just begun, how can he die? A dazzling light was released from Hua Fengliu. Then, the lights actually coalesced into a string, gradually turned into a guqin, and appeared in front of Hua Fengliu's body. At this moment, the breath on Hua Fengliu's body also rose sharply. Break the legal phase, to the sky. A lifelong soul, this is impossible. Tianwei Jiangxiu stared at the front, then he seemed to understand something, his face changed greatly. Romantic flower, you killed yourself. Sunhua Mary ignored it, 10 fingers flicked the strings, and immediately, the piano sounded, an invisible wave was released. Like a dragon's song, the sound of a gurgling sound, and a sharp sword sharpened. Kangshan Longyan. Tianwei Jian Ziu looked at the romantic flower, this is the piano sound magic that Keen Demon was good at that time, Kangshan Longyan. I saw Hua Fengliu strumming the strings at a very fast speed, and the sound of the piano sounded all over the world. A wave of waves enveloped everyone, approached the sword in black, and killed Chia Fan and Long Yin. Boom! Chia Fanru snorted, pale, as if slamming. Careful, it's the piano sounding spell, back off. Tianwei Jian Ziu roared loudly, and a sharp sword slammed into the sky, rolling towards the flower wind. Fanhua Mary's finger speed was getting faster and faster, the piano sound was like magic, covering the vast space. Kill him. Chia Fan was constantly vomiting blood, only feeling that his spirit was about to explode, and the surrounding strong people protected him from retreating. Everyone retreated, including Shizhong and Tang Lin hunting for Yi Fuxian. Kill. Hua Fengliu's voice was low, the sound of the piano cracked, and a stronger sound wave killed Chia Fan. The surrounding strong spirit turned into a light curtain that covered Chia Fan. With a bang, the light curtain broke, and Chia Fan was attacked again. His face was pale, but the power of the piano's voice had also weakened. Sun Shizhong was not so lucky. Under the sound of the piano, he roared, Kikiao was bleeding, and was killed by an earthquake. Keen Demon. Several people who had heard of Hua Fengliu's title trembled. Is this Keen Demon's style? Go! Tianwei Jian Ziu looked very cold, the sword storm covered the whole body, came to Chia Fan to protect him and retreated. When Tang Mo and Gu Mu saw this scene, they also ordered their evacuation. Qin Shui took the Black Unicorn army to retreat. This is a place of right and wrong. Yanhua Fengliu chased her body forward, but her steps were delayed. Pooh! Vomited blood, and Hua Fengliu wanted to chase, but he was helpless, the Keen Demon generation, and the heroes were too late. However, the piano sound remains the same. Ah! Yi Fuxian jumped out of the canyon and felt the wind around him. When he was about to fall, he actually followed the wind. There was a loud noise, and the wind couldn't stop falling. He hit the ground and felt his legs weak. When I feel the wind, I am afraid that I will die instantly. However, even though he never fell dead, he saw many monsters around him, as if swallowing them. You seek death, Snow Ape said coldly, but just as he spoke, Yi Fuxian's thunderous soul bloomed. I have a destiny with Senior Dragon. I thank him for his fate, Yi Fuxian said loudly. Even in despair, he could not let go of the chance to survive. One of the monsters swallowed him directly, and he was too lazy to pay attention to his words. Yi Fuxian felt the smell of the wind, which was the breath in the mouth of the vicious python, and Yi Fuxian was desperate. Bang! I saw the huge python monster slap and fly out. The Snow Ape came to Yi Fuxian's body, looked at him like a mountain, and said, this soul was given by the old dragon. Yan Yi Fuxian's eyes shone for a few minutes, and he said, last year, I tried on Tianyao Mountain, and Long Yun, the predecessor of the dragon, appeared, and I thought I could get my soul. Imagine the soul of life. Snow Ape looked at Yi Fuxian with dead eyes, and then said, show me your life soul. Yi nodded. The ancient trees of the world appeared, and the ancient trees swaying in the wind made a rustling sound, just like real. The snow monkey's body shivered wildly, his eyes became red instantly, a huge body lay down, and a huge head came to Yi Fuxian's face. What happened to his predecessor? Yi Fuxian put away his soul, and saw the snow monkey's eyes very sad. Child. The Snow Ape reached out and touched Yi Fuxian's face. In his big eyes, there were crystal tears that fell. The red eyes and flowing tears made Yi Fuxian feel sad feeling. What's the matter? The snow monkey trembled slightly, and tears continued to fall. Did your predecessor know me? Yi Fuxian's mood seemed to be infected, and his voice seemed a bit low. Serious kid. The Snow Ape looked in deep sorrow, only to see it slowly stand up, looked up, roared with a terrible scream, the sky screamed, its fists continued to beat on its chest, the mountains shook, and the monsters were stunned to the ground. Shaking, all prostrate. Then the huge body of the snow ape knelt down, and a huge head was buried in front of Yi Futian, like worshipping an emperor. Senior. Yi Futian stopped, all the monsters in the valley worshipped him. Can Senior take me? Yi Futian was a little worried about his teacher. Of course. The snow monkey raised its head and held Yi Futian's body with its hands, then stepped on the ground cracked, and its huge body was thrown like lightning. The next moment, it appeared directly on the mountain peak, the whole Gufeng trembled because of it. The snow ape let go of his hand and put Yi Futian down. Teacher. Yi Futian saw the flowers playing the piano, the strings were bleeding, and his heart was twitching violently. Futian. Hua Fengliu shouted, seeing Yi Futian appear in front of her innocently, almost couldn't believe her eyes. Pooh. The strings broke, then disappeared, and Hua Fengliu spat out blood again, and then his body fell. Teacher. Yi Futian ran forward and lifted Hua Fengliu's body. Someone's there. Snow Monkey looked ahead, Yi Futian looked up, and saw Jian Shi in the distance, and back, saw Yi Futian and Snow Monkey appear together. His heart trembled, how could this be? Kill him, Yi Futian said coldly. The snow ape walked out. Jian Ziu saw this scene and turned to the sword to be wild, but how fast is the snow ape? Roar. That terrifying roar seemed to destroy the world. He stepped on it, and Jiangxiu only felt the end of the day, and shouted, run. As soon as the voice fell, his body was trampled from the air and crushed to death. The snowy ape roared 3 times, and the people in the distance were frightened and fled, thinking how the demon lord suddenly went crazy out of the valley. Ah! At this time, the flower had a weak atmosphere, but he still looked at Yi Futian with a smile, and said, relax, you can't die. At first it was just trash, and it doesn't matter if you throw it away again. I told you to leave me alone, why are you doing this? I died, didn't you die in vain? Yi Futian suddenly loudly, his eyes reddened. The apprentice was forced to die, and I did nothing as a teacher, so I will lose face. Hua Fengliu smiled, you know, I have a bad temper. So you're cool now, but I'm pissed. How can you tell the fairies like this? Yi Futian's eyes turned red. Marry her. Hua Fengliu smiled and was confused. Yi Futian lowered his head, closed his eyes in pain, and tears flowed. Why are you crying? My daughter is very beautiful, don't you want to? Hua Fengliu seemed to have nothing at all. I cry in this life I will be imposed on you. If you are like this, won't I want to kick you when I am strong? Yi Futian said, supported the flowers and walked towards the canyon. Aren't I still using you? Hua Fengliu said on Yi Futian's back. Of course, if I were an emperor at his age, you would be the village governor. Yi Futian carelessly looked at the flowers and looked at the sunset in the sky with a bright smile. After the rest of his life came from the edge of the canyon, Yi Futian glared at him and said, what do you want to do? Don't you want to jump down and be buried? Not. The rest of his life shook his head. Yi Futian was even more angry, saying, fight for justice. You are dead, I will take revenge for you. The rest of his life looked up, staring at Yi Futian with bloodshot eyes. I forgive you. Yi Futian looked at the snow monkey again, and said, can you take me to kill a few people? Yes, but everyone who sees us together will die. Snow monkey was serious. Yi Futian was afraid of Snow Ape's words, looked at the rest of his life, and said, they are all people I love. Have no idea. As for those people, leave it to me. The Snow Ape nodded and took the 3 to the entrance of the statue, leaving Yi Futian outside the door. Yi Futian pushed to the door and entered alone. The puppet statue was empty, there was only a normal human-sized statue, and it was also carved by Emperor Yi King. The aura is very strong here, like a magic circle. When Yi Futian entered, the magic circle flashed automatically, and then continued to brighten. Endless spirits flowed into the small statue, and the statue broke and turned into an imaginary figure that is actually the figure of Yi King Dai. The 2 eyes were opposite. Yi King Dai's eyes were gentle and he asked, son, what is your name? Senior, my name is Yi Futian. The legendary Yi King Dai appeared before me, but somehow, Yi Futian was calm at the moment. You are also called Yi, let the ghost be released to me. Yi King Dai said. Yi Futian released the deceased again. When he saw Yi Futian's soul, Yi King Dai remained there, and then he showed a very painful and sad expression, like the reaction of a snow monkey, like tears. Yi King Dai's vision advanced, and a hazy and unreal shadow embraced Yi Futian. Yi King Dai said softly, son, why are you and why are you? Her voice was like crying. Yi Futian also wanted to cry, and said softly, senior, aren't you waiting for me? Who am I? The person I was waiting for was not you, I didn't think it was you. Yi King Dai's tone was very sad, the figure floated back to where he was, his eyes softened, son, you are the future king of the kingdom of God, the ruler of the world. Chapter 40, Coming Out of the Mountain. Yi Futian looked at Emperor Yi King. The godly father seemed to be saying the same thing. Why do they have such high hopes for themselves? My father said that his soul and soul were inherited from his ancestors, but Yi Qingdai and the Snow Ape knew his life and soul. The Emperor is too far away from me, can Senior tell me who I am? Yi Futian asked softly. Son, you must believe in yourself, your destiny is destined to become a king. Yi Qingdai's voice was still soft. Yi Futian understood that he refused to tell himself. His mood was a little low, and said, since seniors are not waiting for me, then am I disturbing seniors? Of course not. Yi Qingdai's eyes looked at Yi Futian lovingly. Although I am sad to see you, no one is more suitable to inherit everything from you. Should senior leave me an inheritance? Yi Futian said. Well, the soul of my life, my own martial arts method. Yi Qingdai nodded. Can the martial arts be passed on to my friends? He is a natural warrior. Yi Futian thought about the rest of his life. Yi Qingdai's martial arts must be very strong. Is his surname Yu? Yi Qingdai asked. How did senior know? Yi Futian was shocked. If it wasn't for you, I might have given it to him, but because you are here, you can only be yours, he was born for you. Yi Qingdai shook his head. Yi Futian lowered his head, and some sad, the godly father also said so it's not fair for the rest of my life. Kid, time is running out, although I still want to see you more, and even watch you grow up. Yi Qingdai's voice was low and sad. Yi Futian looked at him and said, you can't tell me, what do we do? Is it important? Yi Qingdai shook his head, looked into his eyes full of kindness and perseverance, then the illusory figure turned into endless light, and went to Yi Futian's eyebrows. At this moment, Yi Futian only felt a terrifying storm of mental power pierce through his mind, causing his body to tremble to it, revealing an extremely painful look. The third time, Yi Futian thought restlessly, and then lost consciousness again. When Yi Futian woke up, the rest of his life and Hua Fengliu sat next to each other. They were all inside the statue, and the Snow Ape and the demon stood outside. It turns out that you have a good life. Hua Fengliu looked at Yi Futian Road. Chia Fan summoned the strongest in the sky to win the inheritance, and led a savage wave to force the strong in Qingzhou City. Finally, he did it for Yi Futian. Wedding dress. Yi Futian smiled bitterly and felt a little depressed. He didn't know what happened. Close your eyes, the consciousness enters the soul of life, and there is one more life soul, the eye of the storm, that is, a pair of dark eyes, turned into a pitch-black hole, which contains the power of a violent spiritual storm. This time the soul of life is not a mere vision, but a direct gift, which seemed to contain a terrifying spiritual power. Next, Yi Futian's eyes opened. The next moment, his eyes became very deep and strange, like a terrible storm. A strong spiritual power bloomed from his pupils, and the flower wind beside him flickered. The glaring glory, the terrifying spiritual power, faintly felt the pressure of an emperor. For a moment, Yi Futian returned to normal, and Hua Fengli looked at him. Spiritual department. Well, the master controls the beast. Yi Futian nodded. In addition to the 7 series masters, there are several special destiny masters, such as Hua Fengliu, Qin Yin Master, and Beast Lord. In fact, it belongs to the spiritual master, directly attacking or mentally controlling. Yi Qingdai turned out to be an animal master, Hua Fengliu whispered. Also a super martial arts practitioner. Yi Futian felt a memory in his mind. Spirit Master is very scary, but defense is a weakness, and martial arts is perfect. Hua Fengliu nodded, a legendary figure who united China, and his talent can be imagined. You can feel the inheritance carefully, don't disturb us. Hua Fengliu was happy for Yi Futian. Okay. Yi Futian closed his eyes, and then several memory images flooded his mind. The dragon cloud, the golden winged dapping soared for 9 days, and the ape trampled the mountains and rivers. These photos are too clear and true. Yi Futian just felt immersed in the picture. Shenlong refining the body, the refining power of the ape god, Shenpeng refining the bones and speeding up, forging the body and physical body, and the world is shaken. Yi Futian was very surprised. Dragon soul was already there. He was free to observe and think about the divine ape and the golden winged dapping. Gradually, the wind, earth, and gold attributes around his body are aura, and in the palace of life, there is a new soul. Yi Futian finally understood why Yi Qingdai said that no one was more suitable to inherit Yi Qingdai's inheritance than him. He had the rarest talent for creating souls. Before long, Yi Futian Ming Palace was reborn 2 kinds of life souls. Therefore, in the Palace of Life, in addition to the ancient trees of the Destiny Soul world, there are Sun, Thunder Dragon, Keen, Storm Eye, Golden Winged Dapping, and God Ape. Among them, the life and soul of the Golden Winged Dapping are 2 attributes. Wind, gold. For a long time, when Yi Futian opened his eyes, he looked strangely at Hua Fengliu and the rest of his life. What do you see? Hua Fengliu looked at Yi Futian doubtfully. He saw Yi Futian's eyes slowly blooming with a strange smile. Teacher, the inheritance is a little strong. The life soul is too much, and my heart can't stand it now. Yi Futian blinked. For a moment, Wanyua fell in love, thought of his lost soul, and spat out 2 words, you go. Pooh. The smile in Yi Fuxian's eyes bloomed. He took a deep breath to calm his mood and looked at the unhappy expression of the flower. He said, "Teacher, you have such a good life. I have a disciple and a son-in-law. I looked at Yi Fuxian for the rest of my life." There was an urge for him to be beaten. The following month, Yi Fuxian trained in the Tianyao mountain gorge. Wanyao blocked the canyon, and was guarded by the snow apes, and no one could approach the round ground. At this time, Yi Fuxian was surrounded by a group of monsters in the canyon. Roar! A demon cow rushed up and trampled Yi Fuxian. When Yi Fuxian stepped on the ground, the earth roared and went straight for the demon cow. When he ran, there was a dragon hidden in his body. The sound came out, raised his fist, and exploded in one blow. With a loud sound, the demon cow that was rushing forward was hit by a punch. Almost at the same time, the wind blew, and the residual image was drawn to his neck. Yi Fuxian spread his arms as if turning into wings and spread his wings. The leopard flew through the air, and he suddenly became alert. Then he saw Yi Fuxian descend like Tianpeng, and his hand was cut like a sharp knife. His arms turned into real dapping wings, revealing a golden light. With a snoring sound, wounds appeared on the demon leopard's body. If Yi Fuxian had no mercy, he would be cut open. The other monsters roared lowly and didn't dare to come forward. A body like a dragon, strength like an ape, and a body like Rupeng. This month has made great progress. The flower watching next to Feng Fengli said, "It's too far from the real Shenlong dapping." Yi Fuxian thought about the image in his head and shook his head with interest, saying, "What is your territory?" Martial arts and magicians are two-star glory worlds, and they must be with the gods and beasts. Compared. Yi Fuxian trembled with a smile, then looked at the snow monkey next to him. "Senior, I have to go." "Okay, think about what monsters to take. Your mental strength is too weak. You can only control monsters in the low-order phase," Zuape said. "Is Senior really not with me?" Yi Fuxian said sadly. If the snow ape could follow him out of the mountain, Dongheifu would walk to the side. "I will continue to be here. I will be here for a day, and no one will know that the lineage has been taken, and no one will know that you have a lineage. Otherwise, in your current state." Continue to say that Yi Fuxian is a bit depressed, and he naturally understands this, but it is still a pity. Yi Fuxian looked at the monsters around him. Since it can't be doubted that he has inherited Yikingai's inheritance, he can't be too pretentious. "Senior, let the black wind carving come to my side," Yi Fuxian said. "Okay." Snow Ape nodded, and then summoned a black wind carving of a low-level method. Yi Fuxian walked in front of the black wind carving. His eyes became very strange, the eyes of the soul storm were released, and the terrifying spiritual power went towards the black wind carving. The snow ape stared at the black wind eagle, making him afraid to fight back. The black wind eagle is a wind attribute, similar to a human wind master, and its spiritual power is also the level of law. If you don't cooperate, Yi Fuxian realm can't control it. This is Yi Fuxian's first use of the Eye of the Storm to rule the soul, only to feel that the black wind sculpted in front of his eyes appeared in his pupils. The strong spiritual power instilled a spiritual mark. The black wind carving body was fierce. Trembling, if it rejects Yi Fuxian, it will be bitten again. At this time, the spiritual power of the black wind carving felt the tremendous pressure of the emperor, and it was allowed to be planted by Yi Fuxian's spiritual imprint. Then, the spiritual power of the two resounded. "Who?" Yi Fuxian took a deep breath, and saw the black wind eagle in front of him bowing to him. "Hua Fengliu, next to me, thought of the big black vulture that carried Wajiayu away. I think the guy is very upset, so did he choose the black wind vulture?" "Senior, I'm leaving." The three Yi Fuxian sat behind Haibeng Diao, bid farewell to the snow monkey, and then looked deeply at the statue of Yikingdai. "Go." Snow monkey nodded. Black wind carvings rose in the wind. Yi Fuxian saw the snow monkey in the canyon getting smaller, the statue became more and more blurry, and he felt a little reluctant. "Go to escort," the snow ape said coldly, and then all the demons in the canyon came out like a terrifying savage wave. The people who were on the way to Tianyao Mountain Medan were frightened.